Sport 2 Social.
Mr. Jennings, how would you rate Arsenal's chances of getting through against Real Madrid?
I think it's slim and none, and slim just left town.
Arsenal 1, Real Madrid 0. What a free kick! Declan Rice.
They're not good enough. They're not good enough at football. They're coming up against a true behemoth. They're coming up against a genuine icon in Carlo Ancelotti.
He's done it again! Arsenal 2, Real Madrid 0.
Arsenal are relying on vibes. They're not efficient in Europe. They're comparable to a 3-pin plug in Europe. They're not a good European side.
As Arsenal take a 3-0 lead to the Bernabeu.
I just don't think they have a prayer. I honestly think that Real Madrid will win home and away. I also think it could be one of those where the game is over. You know, if you break the game into quarters. I think after the first quarter, so when the referee blows the half-time whistle in the first match, I think it could be game, set and match there.
Oh, Rory. Come on, man. I'm speechless. Well, Declan Rice has just stuck it to Rory Jennings, that's for sure. I mean, the pure dismissal of any chances Arsenal might have had. I mean, I know I'm an Arsenal fan, but that's wild to me.
Honestly, it is wild. And he's not alone. There were so many people that thought this was going to be a hiding akin to the hidings that Bayern Munich used to give you in the Champions League. But this is a different Arsenal side, and this is a Real Madrid side that have not been firing this season. So anyone who came with the opinion that Real Madrid are going to absolutely spank Arsenal at the Emirates, if it was at the Bernabeu, you might have an argument. But at the Emirates, when has anyone come to the Emirates in the last 2 years and spanked Arsenal in any competition? It doesn't happen. They are one of the best teams in the world, and people can not like that, but it's the truth. I predicted an Arsenal win before the game. I feel very vindicated because of it. I was getting called a madman, but you look at the way that Arsenal match up with Real Madrid, and it's very favourable. Especially with Saka back. Real Madrid out wide. Alaba playing at left back. Alaba hasn't been an effective left back for at least 4 or 5 seasons. He's barely an effective centre back anymore. And so Saka was going to have him on toast. You look at the midfield, and I know that Symeou was missing. I think that was a huge miss for Real Madrid. But the legs and the energy of an Odegaard and a Rice and Partey just there doing what Partey does. I loved the matchup, and I didn't think it was going to be 3-0. I didn't think it was going to be as emphatic. I didn't think that Courtois was going to be Real Madrid's best player and they'd still lose 3-0. But credit to Arsenal, credit to Arteta, and all those naysayers are going to be hate watching like crazy next week, hoping for an early Madrid goal to see Arsenal crumble and capitulate in Europe. It's not going to happen. It's a different time.
I mean, Arsenal deserve immense credit for that display the other night, because it wasn't just the magical moments provided by Declan Rice or Mikel Merino. It was all round tactically. Arsenal got everything spot on. You know, they found a way of inviting that Real Madrid half press, because it is a half press. You know, there's only a few players in that team that actually do it, and when they do it, they don't do it with the same energy that some of the best pressing teams in the world do. They want to attack space in behind. Arsenal were very clever in that they left spaces in behind themselves when they squeezed up, but manageable spaces that David Raya could command, spaces that, you know, were not so big that they couldn't handle it. They played through the lines unbelievably well through Partey and through Myles Lewis-Skelly. And, you know, they had a punch in the final third. And you're right to mention that Real Madrid had some players missing. But let's not forget that Jakub Kiwior was playing at left centre-back instead of Gabriel. They had an 18-year-old at left full-back in Myles Lewis-Skelly. Mikel Merino's playing up front. I mean, not enough has been said about him. Obviously, Declan Rice has dominated the headlines, and rightly so, for those 2 wonderful free kicks. But Mikel Merino's finished. If Arsenal had bought a striker for £80 million in January and they produced the return that Mikel Merino has, everybody would be sitting here going, what a wonderful bit of business.
Yeah, it's true.
So credit to Mikel Merino for A, adapting his game to play that role, and B, to Mikel Arteta for thinking outside of the box and making it work.
100%. Can I ask you, as somebody who was there, talk about the atmosphere? Because everybody who went said they've never felt anything like that at the Emirates. And I was watching the broadcast, and Wayne Rooney said he was taken aback by the atmosphere. How good was it at the Emirates on Tuesday?
It was unbelievable. You know, you think back to the kind of beginning of Arsenal's time at the Emirates Stadium, and the atmosphere was a bit flat, right? It was a big change. You moved from the small, compact Highbury Stadium to that, and all of a sudden you got more fans in there, and people would argue the more fans you have, the less engaged they are, etc., etc. There's a lot of corporate seats, all the rest of it. But everybody to a man did their part the other night. And what I found really funny was, you know, people tend to sneak off for a drink 5 minutes before half time and all the rest of it, 5 minutes before the end. And they have screens in the concourses and they normally show the game on those screens. So there's a lot of people that go for a beer and they go, you know what, if I'm going to eat 5 minutes into the second half to finish my beer, I'll do that. They didn't show the game on the screens. Yeah. There was a message on the screens that said, you need to do your part, get back to your seat.
Love that.
Like, it was phenomenal. And the atmosphere throughout was just incredible.
You have to do your part.
Yeah, exactly. And the explosions of like joy when each of those goals hit the back of the net. The first one, it was pure joy. The second one, it was disbelief.
What was your view of it? Where were you sitting?
So I was sitting in the press box, which is right behind the tunnel, essentially.
Yeah.
So I was looking at Declan Rice's free kicks from kind of behind.
Okay, yeah.
So you could see the whip on them. You could see the bend on them. You could appreciate what unbelievable, incredible skill that was. But the second reaction, it was disbelief. I think pretty much everybody in the stadium would have put their hands to their head first in shock before they realised what had happened and then started jumping up and down. It's just unbelievable.
That's what Luke Henry said as well. He said the first one, yeah, obviously pure ecstasy. He said the second one, there was like a split second of just like, we can't believe this has happened again. Absolutely incredible free kicks. I mean, if those 2 free kicks are in your repertoire for the whole of your career, they go in the top 3. Yeah. And he had them in both in the same game, which is absolutely incredible. And also to again, not to pile on Rory, but what he said, Arsenal are relying on vibes, he's got it the wrong way round. Real Madrid rely on vibes when it comes to Europe. Ancelotti is a manager, kind of the economy will regulate itself type of manager, where he sits there, the eyebrow raises and his team figures it out. Whereas Arteta is so detail orientated that it was never going to be about vibes. It was going to be about the setup. And that's what we saw come to the fore. And in a weird way, it almost helped Moreno playing up top. It made it a little bit more difficult for Madrid to play out. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant performance. And you see the haters in the post-mortem saying that Real Madrid weren't actually that good and Arsenal weren't actually that good. And you are bugging if you believe that. That was one of the best European performances that you'll see in a long, long time against the defending European champions. And the free kicks, when you see those type of free kicks, right, they're normally against keepers that aren't of the level. When you look back on those free kicks in 5, 6, 7 years time, you'll be like, oh, Thibaut Courtois, one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time, was in goal and couldn't get anywhere near him. It was a perfect evening for Arsenal. And yeah, you take that 3-goal lead to the Bernabeu and hopefully you can, for your sake, you can hang on.
Yeah, fingers crossed. On the weekend's game, Brentford, Arsenal are not going to win the Premier League. Okay, that's fair to say. Would you be tempted if you were Mikel Arteta to make wholesale changes? Because there's a few players for me that you need to protect at all costs going into the second leg at the Bernabeu.
100%. Normally, I don't like that at this stage of the season. If you're competing on multiple fronts, people say you have to kind of pick a competition. But if you're rolling and you're playing well, you just play your best team and you just deal with the consequences. But when there is a clear focus, you've got to rest players. I remember in 2014, Chelsea was still in the title race, but Jose Mourinho was making a statement, went to Anfield and he played Mark Schwarzer in goal. He played Thomas Callas as centre-back because you're sending the message saying the Premier League aren't protecting us. We've got a Champions League semi-final coming up against Atletico Madrid. I'm playing a weakened team against Liverpool at Anfield in a title race that both Chelsea and Liverpool are in. Chelsea managed to get the result in that game, obviously the famous Gerrard slip, but that was an occasion where there was a rotated team. I think that Arsenal should rotate the team on the weekend. There is no point in risking players that could potentially get injured. You don't want to see Saka play on the weekend. You don't even want to see Rice play on the weekend. I know he plays all the time when he's fit, but you don't want to see any of the key players playing against Brentford because you can't risk an injury. This is still Madrid at the Bernabeu. They get an early goal and they get a sniff and it could get dangerous. So yeah, rotate completely.
Yeah, I think Arsenal should rotate heavily as well. I think there's a few players in the squad that have sort of slowly found their way back from injuries and probably could do with a few minutes. Like I think Bukayo Saka could do with 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
What, at the end?
Maybe at the end, depending on the game state. Like I think it's one of those things you kind of got to play by ear on the day, but my instinct is, and Mikel Arteta doesn't work this way, he's shown us that before, but my instinct is wrap them all up in cotton wool, call up a load of the under-21s, stick him in for their Premier League debuts, and whatever will be, will be.
I agree. Saka's superhuman, by the way. We've got to talk about Saka just real quickly. Again, because he hasn't got the accolades to match the play, I think Saka might end up having a Steven Gerrard career, but just in terms of a footballer with the ability to turn up on the biggest occasions as well. With Saka, it's cash money. In a big game, Saka's going to have a good game. He doesn't go missing, he doesn't go hiding. The conversation between Saka and Phil Foden is not a conversation anymore, because Bukayo Saka shows you a 50%, 60% fit Bukayo Saka ripped Real Madrid to pieces. That win was on his back. And so he deserves so much credit. And then Myles Lewis-Skelly as well.
They're both incredible. The thing is as well, is like, especially in Saka's case, you're watching his development in front of your eyes, right? You've got a guy there who, at the beginning when he first broke through, it was about pace and being able to beat people and all the rest of it. And now he plays the game with such incredible intelligence. Like the first 15 minutes or so, he was a little bit within himself, and you could feel that he was just figuring out, how the best way to approach this was. He was trying to figure out what David Alaba wanted to do, what he didn't want to do, where he felt comfortable, where he felt uncomfortable. And he was putting himself in those spaces. And as the game went on, Saka got better and better and better, because he was reacting to what was happening in front of him. It wasn't a player that you've sent out there with one instruction and you've gone, you need to do this. He reads the game and understands the game now, and he figures out what the fullback hates, and he's going to expose that. And that's what he did. He started getting the ball and coming inside, which Alaba doesn't want to do. He's as left-footed as they come, David Alaba. He doesn't want to come inside. He doesn't want to get caught in the crowd. And it was just, there was so many elements to the game that were just brilliant. Lewis-Skelly as well. I mean, the confidence on the guy to just receive the ball in the midfield, inverting from left back, drop a shoulder and skip past one of the world's best midfielders and start moves. It was just unbelievable.
The Lewis-Skelly one, really quickly, sorry. There's a couple points I want to make. Do you go with the same starting 11 at the Bernabeu as you had at the Emirates?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And with Lewis-Skelly, I've heard conversation about potentially moving him into midfield, and I hate it. I'm like, you found your long-term left-back. Haaland's just giving you one. Don't mess around and say he's a midfielder or whatever, because he's really good footballer, but he's an incredible left-back that can come inside as well. Do you think that his long-term position in this Arsenal team is as your starting left-back, or do you reckon he plays in midfield long-term?
I think it will be left-back first and foremost. But I think if I'm Mikel Arteta and I'm rebuilding the midfield in the summer, which he's going to have to do because it looks like Partey's going, looks like Jorginho's going, he would be in my considerations and in my thoughts, because you've also got Ricardo Calafiori there.
He's better than Calafiori at left back.
He is. But when Ben White comes back properly as well, then all of a sudden does that mean that he goes at right back, which means maybe Timber can play left back? You've got Calafiori there. There's a lot of options. And so I'm not saying that I'd take Lewis-Skelly out of left back necessarily, but if I'm trying to build a squad, then I'm writing down names and listing them in positions that they can play to figure out where I'm short. I'm including Lewis-Skelly at left back, but I'm also including him as a midfielder because I think he can do that job.
I think going forward next season, if your back four, obviously right behind them, if your back four is Lewis-Skelly at left back, you've got Gabriel, Saliba and Timber at right back. I think that's the best back four, if not just in the country, in Europe. And I just don't see any point in moving them around. But Arteta's shown us that he's got the imagination for finding pockets and places for players and teams. Mikel Moreno is an example of that, so let's see what he does with Lewis-Skelly long term. Very,
very quickly, score prediction for the weekend's game against Brentford. I mean, we were supposed to preview it, and all we've done is reminisce over a wonderful night.
But that's what happened. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to midweeks, even if it's the Europa League. The Premier League is done. It's done, and so score prediction: Arsenal 1, Brentford 0.
Yeah, I'll go with the same, I think.